Hey everyone, I have some brief comments on your first blog posts. Blog 1 went very well by and large. You did a great job of coming up with your own unique rubrics for how to evaluate websites. I appreciate the discussions that you had of authors' biases, also of the credibility of certain domains. So for example, there were quite a few of you who had conversations about the idea that just because something is a .org, that doesn't necessarily mean the information won't contain some sort of a bias or have some sort of an axe to grind. One thing that we didn't really discuss, that didn't come up too much, was the .com issue. It's often easy for us to just wholesale dismiss .com sites as credible because they are on that kind of wide domain availability. We should be careful of all websites, and I think that's the point to drive home from this assignment. We should look at who the author is, what the organization supporting the site is, where the information is coming from, what authority does the author have, all of those kinds of questions. But .com sites can have all of those things as well. They can provide us with excellent evaluations of different historical topics. So that's something to also keep in mind. Here at the end, I want to raise a few questions and I want to offer a chance for extra credit. So I'm going to post this as an announcement, but I'm also going to post this video as a new blog post in blog number 1. So if you want to take up any of the questions that I put forth here in detail using specific examples to support your answers, you can gain up to 25 points extra credit. So here it goes. Let me pull up my notes. So thinking about this issue of bias, how can we tell if a source is biased? And what do we mean by that? Because bias is often a term that has a negative connotation. It's something that's really easy to throw around. You say that source is biased, that guy's biased, or that woman is biased because they have a certain perspective on a source. This is something we also talked about in Unit 1 as well, that no matter who's writing history, there's always going to be some sort of a bias. So again, the question here is, how can we tell if a source is biased, and what is it that we actually mean by that? Then building on that idea, some of you pointed out that, especially on the biography site, so if you looked at a biography of Juan de Oñate, pointed out that because it was just a straightforward biography of his life, his date of birth, that he was the governor of New Mexico, those kinds of facts, that the source wasn't biased. Is that completely true? Is there room for interpretation in those kind of sources? And then, if not, if there is no bias in a source, is that source very helpful? Is it very useful? Why or why not? So again, what we're looking at here is this: how are we defining bias? And if bias is an interpretation of a past event or of some controversy, without that interpretation, can the source be very useful? Of course, we should evaluate an author's interpretation or bias. But the question here to answer and address is a source without bias very useful, and do those sources even exist? Finally, thinking about the domain, the authors, and so forth as we're looking for credibility of web sources, something that I thought was interesting that was Christina brought up was the issue of usability. So if a website doesn't function very well, if it doesn't load quickly, if the links are broken, what does that say about the credibility of that source, do you think? And then also building on that point, just because there is an About section on a website, so you can click and you can see, at least this tells us who the authors are, where they're coming from, does that make the source credible, and why or why not? So what else do we have to look at as we look at the About section? Because all too often we think, okay, all these elements are present, source is credible, when that might not be the case. So what other questions do we need to ask about the sources as we read the About section? So I've gone on with some of those issues for quite a while here. Writing on any of those commenting here with specific details and specific references to support your evaluations. And again, these can still be brief, yet specific. You can earn up to 25 points extra credit. So if you want to take advantage of that, please do. Also, if you have any questions about my feedback or about anything that we're working on here moving forward, please don't hesitate to ask. And I'm going to finish evaluating your blog responses here today, this morning, and I should get to your Unit 3 journals and your final topics proposals within the next day or two as well, just to let you know where that's all at.